What's up, guys? It's Dan from Coin Bureau Trading. Today, we're going to take a look at why the crypto market is pumping, why there's likely to be a small pullback in the next couple of days, but why the crypto market is likely to continue rallying later this week. If this is the kind of content that you enjoy, then be sure to smash that like button, subscribe to the channel, and ping that notification bell. Before we get started, do keep in mind that nothing in this video is financial advice. It's just my personal analysis of the crypto market. Your analysis could be different, and if it is, that's awesome, because the more difference of opinion that we have, the better traders and the better investors we're all going to become. So let's start off, guys, with why the crypto market is pumping. In short, it's because there's been a nice short squeeze here over the last 24 hours, roughly, probably because of perceived positive news coming out of trade talks between the US and China. For those of you who don't know, Trump is going to be meeting with Xi Jinping in the next couple of days here. Of course, there's been lots of tension around these trade talks, and it seems that there was some positive news over the weekend. This was basically enough to push crypto prices slightly higher, and because so many people were short, the result is that these shorts are getting squeezed, and the practical effect of that is that everyone who bet that prices would go down, they're basically being forced to buy back their positions, and this is basically pushing crypto prices higher. Looking here at Bitcoin on the daily, what's really interesting, guys, of course, there is a lot of resistance somewhere around 116 to 117,000, but not only that, but it looks like we're painting like a mirror image of this pattern that we saw going into October 10th, that huge nasty drawdown. It looks like we're going to have an inverse of that, and the simple reason is, guys, is that there's a CME gap here on the CME futures exchange. You can see somewhere around 111,000 to around 113,500. And for those of you who don't know, of course, when you get this gap, like this difference in price between the closing price last Friday and then starting next week on the CME futures for Bitcoin or Ethereum or any other crypto for that matter that has a CME contract, it's common for basically Bitcoin to fall back into this box here before continuing higher. And again, that is consistent with this idea that, in the next day or two here, we'll probably get a pullback down. Well, in that case, it would be down to the Bollinger Band moving average on the daily, which makes perfect sense. So somewhere, let's say around 111,000 to 112,000, probably in the next couple of days, and then a continuation higher with the Fed meeting on Wednesday, most likely, which I'll get to in just a second. First, looking at Ethereum, similar idea. You guys can see there's a lot of resistance somewhere here around this 4,250 level. And of course, similarly to Bitcoin, we're probably going to get a pullback in Ethereum here in the next couple of days because, yes, it also needs to fill its CME gap here that's somewhere around 3,950 to 4,075 or 4,080 if you want to be exact. So it's likely that Ethereum is going to fall back into this box in the next couple of days. Same with Bitcoin here on the CME futures. And then both Bitcoin and Ethereum will probably continue higher with the Fed meeting, which again is on Wednesday here. For those of you guys who don't know, basically last week, or I think the week before, Jerome Powell had said that QT would probably be ending. He didn't specify when, so this hasn't been priced in yet. He just said, hey, in the near future, we're going to be ending QT. And JP Morgan and other big banks are saying, hey, QT is probably going to end on the 29th here. And of course, that will be a bullish, basically macro factor for the crypto market that will boost the crypto market a lot. But I guess, again, like long story short, things are looking really good here in the short term, but just don't get ahead of your skis. We do probably need to backtrack to fill these CME gaps on Bitcoin and Ethereum before continuing higher. So again, in the short term, as in the next couple of days, we're probably going to get a pullback, and then starting on Wednesday, most likely a continuation higher in Bitcoin, Ethereum, and the rest of the crypto market. And if you guys do want to try trading that, then check out the description. Just click on that more button there, and you'll see that there's a nice deal here. BitGet up to 50,000 USDT deposit bonus. Click on that link. It'll take you to a page that looks like this. As you guys can see, the Coin Bureau does have a partnership with BitGet, but I will say on a personal note that I'm a fan of BitGet as an exchange. That doesn't mean that you should keep all your crypto on an exchange. You always need to keep your crypto in your own personal wallet, but BitGet has everything you could possibly need when it comes to like trading or buying or selling, investing, whatever you want to call it. They have spot markets, they have futures, they have also like tokenized stocks and like trading on chain and a whole bunch of other stuff like, trading bots. So all these things that will help you out. Of course, you do need to do quite a few things to get that maximum 50,000 reward, but do check out the exchange, sign up, play around with it, see if you like it, and who knows, maybe you'll get enough trading volume to actually get these VIP rewards here. So do check out that link in the description. Helps you out and it helps us out. Anyways, guys, to wrap things up, I actually want to talk about ETH BTC, Sol BTC, and Sol ETH. These, in my opinion, these are the three most fascinating charts that are out there. And of course, when it comes to ETH BTC here, zooming in more on the daily, you can see that we have a brilliant, just amazing pattern here that it looks like ETH BTC is about to break out. But again, like we're probably going to get a little bit of a pullback here in ETH BTC in the next couple of days when we do get a pullback to that CME gap. That's what I'm expecting. Maybe it won't happen and we just ignore the CME gap. Who knows? But the thing is that last week's close on ETH BTC closed pretty bullish in my opinion. Looks like we're going to get a huge breakout here in ETH BTC later this week. And if you look, guys, this is kind of like the inverse of what we saw in November 2024. There's probably going to be a melt up in ETH BTC here in the next few days. And what's really interesting is we're seeing something very similar here on Solana, on Sol BTC, which again, like, of course, Sol is a little bit weaker, you could say, like compared to Ethereum relative to Bitcoin, but that doesn't change the fact that the pattern here is pretty clear. We're probably going to see an inverse here where in the next, let's say, I don't know, 5 or 6 weeks, we'll probably see Solana rallying pretty substantially against Bitcoin, probably back up to this 0.0024 range, which would be a pretty sizable gain, I believe. Let me actually just measure it out for you guys here. So that you'd be looking at what, like 30 to 35% gain relative to Bitcoin, which is pretty sizable. Of course, in Ethereum's case, it's probably going to be much more. It'll probably be somewhere closer to 50%. But the point is that both Sol BTC and ETH BTC are looking good, and that suggests that both Ethereum and Solana are going to be outperforming Bitcoin here in the coming weeks. And of course, that has a profound impact when it comes to Bitcoin dominance, because of course, everyone is expecting Bitcoin dominance to continue heading higher here. But if ETH BTC and Sol BTC are going to be powering higher, and if you consider that BTC, Bitcoin dominance consists primarily of these large cap altcoin pairings versus Bitcoin like ETH BTC and Sol BTC, if both of these are going up, then that suggests that Bitcoin dominance is going to go down and not up. And again, this pattern that we're seeing here on the weekly looks almost identical to what we saw earlier in the spring, where we saw a gradual rise up, multiple weeks, and then you saw that kind of, big candle and then a capitulation lower. And it's possible, who knows, maybe we'll see another green week here for ETH BTC for Bitcoin dominance. That's certainly possible. But at the same time, I would say it's just as possible that we just get a rollover and then like 4 to 5 weeks of basically down only in Bitcoin dominance, very similarly to what we saw starting in June going into July. I think that's what's what's coming up here, especially when you consider that, Fed policy has the biggest impact on altcoins versus Bitcoin. So that's something to keep in mind as well. Last thing I want to note, because I'm sure some of you will be asking, well, what about Solana versus Ethereum? This is where things get potentially a little bit controversial, you could say. I actually think that in the short term, at least, Solana could outperform Ethereum, again, maybe just over the next couple of weeks or so. Of course, it is kind of like posting lower lows, but similarly, like I do think we're seeing an inverse, again, of this pattern that we saw in 2024, where you're probably going to see a rally up here in Sol versus ETH, probably up to the 0.058 level, maybe 0.057, something like that. And you're going to get one more kind of like rally up there and then a continuation lower. So, but going into, I would say, November, December, it's possible that Sol will actually outperform Ethereum, which would be really interesting. I mean, it's just a possibility I'm throwing out there. That's what the charts suggest. Or who knows, maybe just Sol ETH will just keep chopping in this range here. But I do think it's going to retest the upper level of that range. Then it's going to continue lower, and then that'll kind of be it for, let's say, Sol's outperformance versus Ethereum. But anyways, guys, if you did make it this far and you did find that information helpful, then be sure to smash that like button, subscribe to the channel, ding the notification bell, and I'll see you in the next one.